Hello, it's James B. Happy New Year. This is my first podcast where I have a hangover. Okay, just oversharing. Want to make sure you know that in 8 minutes, June Garber will be coming, so you could skip right ahead to that if you don't need to know the listings this week in Toronto. But, you know, stick around. You could see what's happening in town. Maybe there's something that's going to jar your gherkins and get you out of your house in the first week of January. I'm going to start with Jazz Bistro, and I want to thank Jazz Bistro for coming on as an official sponsor of the show. I also want to thank barberfinancial.com. Captain Paul gave me this idea and has been championing this from the beginning. I also want to thank Lula Lounge, who's also come on board, and Hughes Room Live. So it's really nice to have some of these sponsors. Of course, my principal sponsor, Barbarian Steakhouse. They have such a great steakhouse. I talk about it every week, and I always have a new story. One time I went in there, and there were some reservoir dogs in the house. Harvey Keitel, I don't remember which Baldwin it was, and a few others. Anyway, they were drinking Coca-Cola with chartreuse. So there you go. There's some inside scoop as to what people might be drinking at the front bar of the Barbarian Steakhouse. Moving over to Jazz Bistro, as I said, June Garber is there tonight and tomorrow. She's performing with Duncan Hopkins. He's back from England on bass. Alison Young on saxophone. Boy, she's busy. And Bill King at the piano. Bill King produced some records for June Garber over the years. So it's kind of old home week. It's going to be fun. Tonight and tomorrow, 9 p.m. show, but get there early for dinner. Try the halibut. And then Eliza Pope is there on Sunday at 7 p.m. Beautiful girl. She does some cabaret music. Lisa Particelli is there next Wednesday. Girls' Night Out is a fantastic time. Lisa is a beautiful spirit, innately inclusive. She wants everyone to get up and sing. Boys can sing too, but it's called Girls' Night Out, and you'll want to check that out at jazzbistro.ca. That's Wednesday. Thursday, Colin Hunter is performing with the Anthony Terpstra Seventet, and he mostly does Frank Sinatra music. And then on the weekend, Colin sticks around. Joe Seeley Quartet with Paul Novotny on bass, Daniel Barnes on drums, and Alison Young, there's that name again, on saxophone. So it's a great show, and if you love Rat Pack kind of music, you won't do better than Jazz Bistro on the weekend. Old Mill Toronto tonight, Gord Sheard is there, and he's a fantastic piano player, studied for years in Brazil, and you can hear it in his music. And he's got a killer rhythm section. Canada's Sly and Robbie is what I call Mark Kelso and George Kohler. They are fantastic. So you can see Gord Sheard Trio tonight, Old Mill, Home Smith Bar, and that's 7 till 7:30 till 10:30. No cover, $20 minimum. Tomorrow, Brian Blaine is bringing the blues over there. And then next week, Julian Kachaki is there on Thursday with Scott Metcalf on piano, Eric St. Laurent on guitar. And on the Friday, a week from tonight, Canadian Jazz Quartet are playing at the Home Smith Bar. They pack the joint, so you want to get there early if you want to get a seat. Lula.ca. Now, it looks like they're closed this eve, but if you want things hot and spicy, and I don't just mean on your dinner plate, I also mean on the dance floor, this is a great place. So in January, if you don't want to feel the cold, go into Lula Lounge. It's very tropical, very summery, great staff, great vibe, and you should check out their website because they're very busy. Community-minded type of establishment where they're always doing cool things, whether it's education for kids, whether it's a brunch where they teach you to dance. There's all kinds of things happening there. So check out lula.ca. HughesRoomLive.com. So many acts this month. Dan Hill, David Bookbinder, Auto Rickshaw, the Shuffle Demons, all of them playing this month over at Hughes Room Live. And something coming up soon. It's called the 15th and final edition of The Way We Feel, a celebration of the music of Gordon Lightfoot. Now, Gordon Lightfoot sometimes shows up at Hughes Room over this last 15 years and sits in the audience and watches people sing his music to him. It's a great show. 4 nights of this. That's how popular it's become. And there are people like Kevin Fox, Laurie Cullen, the Good Brothers, an all-star band. So you should check it out. HughesRoomLive.com. Get your tickets right away. It will absolutely sell out. therex.ca. You can check their site for listings. The most exciting for me is tomorrow, Saturday, at noon, the Sinners Choir. I talked about them last week. Really beautiful harmonies and old-time fun. I love going there at noon. Following that, a really respectable blues singer and songwriter, probably one of our very best, Paul Reddick. His music is incredible, and it's hard to believe it's original. It's also hard to believe he's not world famous, but I must say we're really glad that he lives in Toronto. So please don't move. Stay right here, Paul Reddick. Okay. And what else is happening? Justin Backus is a terrific showman. He's on at 7 p.m. And then at 9:45 till late, it's Terry Promain Sextet. Now, aside from him being a childhood friend, or at least a friendly acquaintance, we knew each other in North Bay when we were children, he is a brilliant trombone player, arranger, jazz educator. He and Dave Young have an octet that does some serious bebop. So you'll hear some great bone over there tomorrow night at the Rex Hotel. But for all the listings, 17 to 19 shows a week, go to therex.ca. I whipped through those pretty quick. So let me just remind you that if you like this and if you want to help me out, $5 a month would be great. I have a Patreon page. Please donate. I'm going to do my best to just keep going and promoting all the music I love here in Toronto, but I could use a little help. So if you can help me out, great. If not, that's okay too. Now, here we go. We're going to see June Garber. I'm going to be asking her about her incredible life. Born in South Africa, moved to Canada, went through so many things. I mean, this is a Hollywood movie waiting to happen. But all the way through this, she just kept her spirits up, and she's incredible. So here we go. June Garber on the Jaymz B podcast. Well, hello. I am so happy to have you here. Hello, June Garber.
Hello, my darling James.
First question. You are a singer, but you bring a sense of sincerity, spirituality, not in a corny way, but in a way that, I mean, okay, your website describes you as emotion, warmth, and energy. Okay. I couldn't put it better than that, so I'm going to cheat and read your website. Okay. Tell me about how you approach singing. What is it about singing that is so important to you?
Okay, so I think that because I've had a long time on this planet, and I work very hard. I work very hard to maintain my spirituality. And that's not in a religious way at all. It is to do with lessons. So I have this gravel mountain that I climb every day. And I have lessons. I have empathy, compassion, patience, tolerance, and understanding. And these are my little words that I work on every day. But because it's gravel, so I climb up and then I slip down. And that's okay. But from that, I've had so much inner peace and so much connection to my authenticity as a human being. And only good things come into my head. So I remember Mark Keyswetter, long ago, said
amazing piano player.
He is.
Yeah, brilliant.
And just played for me the other day. And he said to me, "You're like Glinda the Good Witch, who arrives in a bubble." And I think that because I'm so in touch with my truth, my inner truth, that there's nothing in my singing that would ever just be not true or not authentic.
It's not off the cuff. It's actually, it's not, yeah, you take it seriously, is what you're saying.
Well, yes, it's me.
You're performing in front of people and you want to bring something.
Yes, yeah. The same way that you, whenever you're on stage or off stage, you're authentically you, because that's your truth.
And I said in the intro here, before you got here, yeah. I said, men want to have you, women want to be you. Some men want to be you and some women want to have you. There is a sweetness about this, but they're not allowed to have you because you're happily married, and they're not allowed to be you because cloning's illegal. And if they were you, then they'd actually not be them at all.
That's right.
Right.
Yeah. So be yourself.
Be yourself is important.
You know, I try with young singers to help them if they want my help, and I'm glad to do it. I'm totally open to explaining to them what stagecraft is it's really a craft. And I was lucky enough through theater to learn that, so that you know what your space is on stage. But at the same time, when you have your space, there's your audience. And when you're singing in a concert, you're connecting with your audience.
Right. You're all one, basically.
We are one. And if we aren't, it doesn't work. Because for the first 3 songs, say, if people don't know who you are, you have to build that connection. So it's like little threads of silk that you send out like a black widow spider. Except I don't eat my audience.
That's right. Now, some people would think that you're like this because your life has been a bowl of cherries and your entire life has been filled with, you know, cute little puppies and fur coats and things. Tell me a little bit about the early days when you wanted to sing. I understand singing wasn't really a thing that your parents or your father wanted you to do.
No. See, when I was 3 years old, my own father, Eric Garber, was killed in a plane crash. So I remember, amazingly enough, I remember him. And I remember his poem. He used to sing, Inky, Pinky, Ponky. Daddy had a donkey, donkey died. Daddy cried, Inky, Pinky, Ponky. Except he died. And I remember the going away party, because he went to the US to study design and bring back certain patterns. Anyway, so my mother remarried my stepfather 3 months after he passed, which in the Jewish religion, you don't do that. You wait a year of mourning.
Mm-hmm.
And so there was a huge scandal in South Africa, and I wasn't allowed to see my grandparents on my father's side. No one spoke his name. Never spoke his name. Never saw a photograph. It was sort of like absolutely verboten. And then I grew up, and the stepfather, I always call him the stepfather, because he was very cruel.
Mm-hmm.
And very, his values were so strange to me, and very controlling man. And so I wasn't allowed to sing.
That's amazing.
Yeah, I was
As
allowed
a little
to do,
girl.
As a little girl, he would have me perform in front of friends. And so I thought, oh, this is cool. This is what I want to do. And at like 6 years old, I used to pack a little brown school suitcase with all my belongings, go over 3 roads down the road, unpack, and I was in Hollywood. And that's where I knew I'd be. And at 7, I think I designed my Academy Award gown, which was midnight blue with little sparkles in between the tulle. So I was totally ready to be a film actress or a stage actress. And when I was in high school and I wanted to sing with a band, no, this is not happening.
And what do you think it was about him not wanting you to be a performer, whether it's an actor or a singer? What was it about the arts he wasn't appreciating?
Well, in South Africa at that time, it was not thought highly of to have a daughter on the stage, you know. Keep your daughter off the stage, Mrs. Brown, you know. And so, because he was so controlling, I guess my mother thought the same thing. And so it was not allowed. And so I had to become a school teacher.
And that's while you're still in South Africa?
Yeah.
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 When did you escape? When did you make the move to North America?
24. I was 24. So I arrived, and I hadn't had any drama lessons, any singing lessons, any musical instruction. I knew I wanted to sing still. I knew I wanted to be on the stage still. But I had nothing, no skills, nothing. And I was married at the time to an accountant who thought it was absolutely ridiculous to want to be on the stage. And that was not happening. So there I was again, stuck. But I rebelled, and I went away with this traveling circus.
Really? You joined the circus?
Well, it was a band, but it was like a traveling circus. And I'd never been on the road by myself before. And here I was with all these musicians and singers traveling around Canada, working for a singer. That was a backup.
Yeah.
And I thought, yep, this is nice. And the community in Toronto was horrified that I'd left my accountant husband to go on the road. Well, that didn't last. So then came Bob, who actually met me while I was singing.
Okay, I guess my phone should be off.
That was Bob.
Then you met Bob, so you were already singing at this point.
I was.
Yeah, and he's in the audience looking at you.
Yes,
probably
really.
thinking, I probably should get a date with that nice lady.
And tried.
Yeah.
For a lot of, months. But, a lot of months he tried. It just wasn't happening. So
he kept going back over and over. Hey, I want to date you. Resistance is futile.
Poems, everything. And then we finally got married and were married for 35 years. Or together for 35 years with getting married. And then all of a sudden he said, I don't really want you to be on the road anymore. I was like, really? Because by that time I was doing theatre. And he said, no, I'm going to open the school ring business. And I think it would behoove you. He didn't use that word.
That's a pretty good word.
He's American. It would behoove you to join me in the business. So I did, not realizing how disastrous that would be and how much personally I would suffer from that, which I did. So I was, first of all, when I started singing, I was older than any of the singers who were just coming out of Humber by a long shot. So I started my career so late. And then I took it, in the middle of this, took a 15-year hiatus.
That is amazing.
So I just disappeared.
Now, time does go quickly, right? Like, you, No, that wasn't a quick 15 years? No, okay.
No. So I started, so I started gardening, cooking, painting, acrylics on canvas, writing, got a dog, anything to pacify this creative urge for doing something other than setting up, doing the ring thing.
Can you paint a picture of your backyard? Because my God, it was beautiful. The backyard of your house looked like a fantasy garden.
Yeah.
I mean, talk about letting your creative juices flow.
Yeah.
I've never seen a yard like that in a normal neighborhood where you wouldn't know that existed.
Right.
It's like a secret garden.
It was, and that's what I wanted. I only prayed for 3 things in my life, asked for 3 things in my life. One was to meet someone who I loved and who loved me. Number 2 was to get a secret garden. And number 3 was to live in a warm climate by the ocean. So be careful what you ask for, because it was granted, but at the cost. There was a huge cost.
Right, because you finally got to Florida. Oh, first your garden.
Right.
Your garden.
The garden was exquisite, and I did it all myself because there wasn't a budget. So it was a quarter of an acre or a third of an acre, and it was surrounded by huge trees. So that in itself. And
privacy, yeah.
Yes. Then I started to dig beds. And every season I'd dig a bed with a little trowel, with Piggles, the Jack Russell, sitting next to me on her towel, chomping away, keeping me company. Birds, squirrels, bunnies.
Yeah, there were bunny rabbits in your backyard.
Bunny rabbits.
Yeah.
And Piggles was cool because she was older by then. But every plant, I studied all zones and all perennial books for Markham, Ontario, for Unionville.
Yeah.
And planted perennials and impatiens and roses and all exotic passion fruit vines, everything, and they would die in the winter, but the perennials would come back.
And what about, did you have a pool as well?
Oh, yes.
Yeah, see, I'm trying to remember how big. It seemed like the biggest yard ever. Yeah.
So there was this huge, and then I had the pool with a fountain, and there were like 5 or 6 different fountains flowing around. So, and then there were tents, tents, it's my accent, tents, and they would be draped inside with flowing chiffon or flowing, everything was flowing.
I remember going for brunch.
Yes.
Sarah Featherstone, my best friend, was my date, and we had lobster and every kind of classy thing you could imagine.
Yeah, because you didn't eat anything that was cute. So I had to find all ingredients. So there was lobster, there was shrimp, there was...
Yeah, seafoody things.
Yes, and eggs.
It was so good.
Yes.
Now let's go to Florida, because you mentioned, so you had put in the time selling rings. Now it was time to get what you want. You have somebody that loves you. You're singing and performing and having a great life and moving to Florida.
Right.
Right. So now you've left us, and we missed you immediately.
Yes.
But now you're in Florida.
Right. So before I went, my friends would say, "What do you see when you think of Florida?" And I said, "A blank wall," and not in a good way.
Oh. Yeah.
I had no idea, and I knew that we didn't have time to sort of look at where we were moving. And it turned out that none of our furniture fit. So all the stuff that I loved had to be taken to a consignment store. They just like, oh yeah, we'll get $2 for that couch, which was like a $5,000 couch, right? Yeah, maybe $5, that kind of thing. And then we didn't know anybody. We had to start and
you'd already done this several times, where you're starting fresh and you're walking into a place going, I guess I'm starting from the beginning.
Yeah, and I had to sort of, there was one guy who was a musician, beautiful man, and he had a band, Al Hickson, and he started to introduce me to everybody. And then people, because you're a singer and a musician, then you get the audience, and then people think of you in a different way than as if you were just a person who just moved there.
Right. And you played with John Lamb, Duke Ellington's bass player.
Yes.
That must have been sweet.
Oh, what a gentleman. I was so scared of him. I couldn't even, you know me, I'm quite shy.
And he's got a really sassy sense of humor.
Oh,
he's a very sweet, funny man. Yeah.
Yes.
So he may be a bit alarming because he's so charming.
But I could only call him Mr. Lamb at all times, never John. And he was so sweet. And then I'd get really close up to him when I was on stage, and he'd play together, we'd just riff off each other. It was fantastic. And I met some beautiful people there. There were really lovely people who took care of me, because then Bob passed away. And that was, I don't think I've ever felt so much pain in my physical and emotional.
Yeah.
Because when you've been together with someone for 35 years, that the pain of loss is astoundingly. It's like someone pulls your chest open, drags all your insides out, and you're just left like a shell.
And somehow you weren't really granted status in America.
No.
Like you couldn't stay. He was American, you were Canadian.
Yeah, because he was supposed to be. He said, we have to be in the U.S. for a year, and then you can apply for a green card. And I didn't know, and I didn't study it. I just said, yeah, that's right. but he didn't fill anything out. And I think that he was having problems with oxygen because he had pulmonary fibrosis. And his oxygen levels were like 72. We discovered that 2 weeks before he passed, because he would never go to a doctor. Are you crazy? He's a guy. Why go to a doctor?
Right.
What do they know? So, you know, we discovered this, and I think his thought processes were off. So I used to say to him, I think you're having a foggy day today. You're not kind of like, and his critical thought processes weren't what they used to be, which were very sharp. So I noticed that, but, you know. And
then after this happened, where did you go after Florida?
I had to leave. I came back to Toronto. I packed the whole apartment with this really, really amazing friend of mine, Sharon. And I must say that for the 3 months that it took me to pack and leave, I wasn't left alone for 1 second of one day. I either had friends or family, or if a friend had to go out, she'd get me a babysitter. Honest to God, a babysitter. And so when I came to Toronto, I stayed with Sharon, and then I found a tiny little apartment, because I was everything, all the financials and all the law and everything was a big mess.
This was where we come in together again. I remember you coming to one of my salons, not singing, but being in the room and enjoying the vibration of all these other singers. Right?
I couldn't sing.
No. And you were very quiet, and you were also skinny as a bird.
Yeah.
You looked beautiful, but very unhealthy in a way.
Yeah.
But I remember this, and just how much people wanted to sing for you.
Yeah.
Nobody was going to pressure you to sing right away.
Right. Yeah, I couldn't sing anymore. I had no feelings. I was just shut down pretty tight.
Now, who brought you back? Who? Marquis Sweater is the one who
found my voice.
Who said, let's just sing anyway, just come over and do anything.
Yes.
Just do something. Yeah.
Yeah. So he was my go-to for singing and confidence and rehearsing together all the time. And I remember, because I never wanted to drive a car again, because Bob had passed away in the car while I was driving. So I still don't have a car. So I used to walk or take the bus, because I moved to Yonge and Eglinton. And he was down Eglinton, way past Avenue Road. So I used to walk there. This frail little bird.
Yeah. Right.
And he said, oh, okay, let's try. And I went, peep, peep. He said, okay, that's good for today. And then the next day it was like, peep. And that's how I got my voice back.
I remember you singing a couple of songs that were made famous by Judy Garland. When you finally had your voice back at my place, at a salon, there wasn't a dry eye in the house. It was the definitive version. Your voice was big and soared and wailed, if I may say. You were channeling everything into that song.
Yeah.
And then after that, you started performing, particularly at the Old Mill, sold-out houses at all times.
Yeah.
That must have been your real kind of coming back party, right? It was when you actually, it was during the Toronto Jazz Festival.
Yes.
And you got out and the room was full and you just sang like you were never away.
Yeah. Well, see, what happened was that when I came back, I was a mess. And then I went to Australia to be with my family in April, and Faye Olsen from the Old Mill sent me an email and said, you're doing the jazz festival. And I said, I am not. She said, oh yes, and Jackie Richardson's going to be one of your guests, and Amanda Martinez, and Barbara Leaker, and
Heather Bamber.
No, the one who went to New York sings.
Melissa Stiviano.
Melissa.
Wow.
Yeah.
So Faye and Marquis White are together.
Yeah.
Definitely, like Faye, that's a pretty ballsy thing, and you don't say no to Faye Olsen.
No.
She's too smart.
Well.
You tried, right? You tried to say no.
But, you know, and then so then I came back to sing. And then before I left for Australia, there was a woman at the deli. She was had owned this Italian deli, and she said to me, "I think you should meet this gentleman." And I said, "Absolutely not. I mean, because she found out my whole life story." I think, oh, and she said, "No, but there's this wonderful man you should meet." And I said, "No, I'm going to Australia now." And I came back from Australia feeling quite healed, because my sister-in-law took me to grief counseling, because she had lost a son to brain cancer, and she knew what I was going through. And they were so fabulous. And so I came back to Toronto feeling good, feeling really, really good, and going out and seeing friends. And then the woman at the deli said, "This guy's still here, you know, and you went to Australia and he's Australian." I said, "Really?" "Yeah," she said, "yeah. And I think you should meet him." I said, "No." And I gave her the poster for the jazz festival, because I was performing. I said, "Here's my email. Just call me, I'll get you seats." And she gave it to, you know who.
Your current and final husband.
And final
You're not going to have to look anymore.
This is it.
Oh, tell me, I mean, honestly, with you and Brian, it is such a beautiful love story, and probably the coolest, funkiest wedding I've ever been to.
Yeah.
Describe, okay, so how did he pop the question, and how did you decide to do your wedding at the Jazz Bistro?
Yeah, it was so beautiful. So Brian and I met on June 18th. It's 2014 at La Vita Sociale, which was the Chibo's before.
Right.
And we'd never met each other, and we had coffee, and I talked, and he listened, and he talked, and then we went on another date, and then he'd booked the last 2 tickets to come to the jazz show at Homesmith.
Yeah.
The jazz festival, because every night was sold out. So then we decided we were going to get married in Bali, Indonesia, so that our family, who are all from Australia, could come. And then we thought, but we want to have like a party for our friends before we go, after we come back. We didn't know. So it landed up that we booked the Bistro, because I love the Bistro. And Sybil Walker was so kind. She gave us all 3 floors so that we could have the reception on the first floor, and Attila Fiesch was playing piano, George Kohler, and I think Eric St. Laurent was there playing guitar, and they played on the as people came in. Then we moved the ceremony to the 2nd floor, and that was so precious. And my friend Christiane Bristow was doing the ceremony, and she just had a huge stomach surgery, and she just a week before, and she said,
She was fantastic. You would never know that. Nope. You would never know there's something like that.
She still had staples in.
Wow.
I said, "You're not coming. You know, your sister can do it." "No."
And then you had your reception on the top of the Jazz Bistro,
Yes.
where everyone had a concert, and yeah, it was such an amazing time.
Signature cocktails. Sybil arranged everything, and Stacey McIntyre did the cake from Stacey Cakes, and she did that. She's such a beautiful human being, that child. She's amazing.
Unbelievable.
So it was
And now with
glorious.
all of this, you keep making records throughout, after your 15 years absent,
Yes.
when you're in Toronto, you start to make records.
Yeah.
I remember your very first demo, and it wasn't a good recording, but your voice was fantastic, and it was the song Gentle Rain.
Yes. You were so beautiful. You were so beautiful. I said, I've got this thing that's been done in some stupid studio, and I wrapped it in ribbons with some flowers, and I made my way to in Ryerson studio, right?
Yeah, that's right.
And I came up and the things opened, and I said, "I'd like to see Jaymz B, please." And you came out, and I gave you this, and you said, "I can't promise I'll play this, but I promise I'll listen to it." And you played Gentle Rain. Oh my God. You were the first person who played anything I'd done.
Was this, were you in a car, in a home? When you heard this on the radio, where were you?
I was at home in the afternoon, and I had a gig that night at that 403, which is now.
Yeah.
And I just lost it. I was at home, and I was like, I can't believe this. I cannot believe this. And I got to the gig that night, and the pianist, who was really not that good.
Well, he may have been good, but you play with the very best, so it's hard to even compare when you play with people like Attila Fish. It's hard to compare.
So he was furious that his name was not mentioned, but his name was all over the cover, and I was just like, had a little thing at the back. Anyway.
Well, I hadn't met him. The production wasn't amazing, and it was your voice that made the thing. It wouldn't have been played on the radio without your voice.
No.
There we go.
So I was so grateful.
Then you followed up with a bunch of other records.
Yes.
What do you have a favorite song or a favorite record?
Every single song I think I chose was something that I felt that I wanted to do, except I encouraged input from people that I was working with, because I don't know everything. I don't know what is good. So if someone suggested something, I'd listen and try and absorb it. And if it got absorbed into me, into my DNA, and I could do something, then I would do it. So it was a sort of like a compilation of everybody's ideas of what they thought was good.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
The last record you made seemed to have the most breadth about your life. It seemed to be the most biographical, maybe, of all of your records.
Right.
Was that intentional? The record This I Know is what I'm talking about.
Yeah. I don't think so, but there were things that I wanted to say, or things that I wanted to share with people that maybe I'd not had the opportunity to do before. So there were songs from my land of birth that I wanted to share. And
South African, almost folk songs. Yeah.
South African songs that I had not had a chance to do. And then I remember at some point being in Florida and not being able to get a jazz station. It would drive me crazy. And I was listening to another radio station that was playing like the Adele song.
Skyfall?
No, it wasn't.
Oh, not the
Skyfall.
Bantu, the one before.
Yeah. And it was like, it'll come to me in a second. Rumor has it. So I'm listening to this, and I'm listening to the essence of the beat, and I went, that sounds like Fever. So you could do Fever and mush it up with this. So that's what I did. So I did Rumor Has It with Fever. And I thought to myself, I said, self, this really works. Whether it did or not, I don't know. So it was things like that, like odd things, or Don't Cry Out Loud, that was done in a funereal way. Mm-hmm. Because it's such a powerful song. And a lot of people forget that, or they've never heard anyone cover it. They only know the hit version, and then they've never heard anyone do it. But it was biographical for me. Yep. In a way, autobiographical, because it was all the things that I'd just been through. So in that way, those songs were chosen and done in a way that I thought was very artistic and very thoughtful. right?
So you're in Toronto now. You're going to make more new music. You're doing concerts a lot.
Yes.
Including, if people are watching this the day it comes out, tonight at Jazz Bistro. But you're playing around a lot. What do you think of Toronto's music scene and the community here?
Well, I think that if I was a young person now, I would be scared because there are only a few people that will take young people and lift them up and show them to the world. And I think you do that in a huge way. And I think it's very important for the young people coming up. So that I'm doing the show at the Jazz Bistro, and I have Joanna Majoko as a guest. Because yes, she's known, but do my crowd know her? No. So I want, because she's so brilliant and so young and so incredibly talented.
Yeah, so
I want to
versatile.
showcase her, you know, in that way. And I think that because when I started singing, and I was already much older than most of the kids coming out of Humber or York or U of T music programs, there's not the rooms that we had to play in. But when you do your show, you tell people, yeah, here's the room, here's who's playing, and you tell people about the young people who are coming up who are vital to the music.
That's right.
And their audiences will therefore be younger, so we carry on the music, whether it be jazz or, you know.
Well, you mentioned that young people might be a little bit overwhelmed by how much competition is out there. Who do you trust? In particular, with female jazz musicians or singers, often singers are musicians. But with these artists, are you? Do you have specific advice, like for young girls compared to young guys? Do you think there's that much of a difference right now in the scene?
I think when I was doing theatre and singing, it was vital to have a manager. And there were managers available. And even now, whether you're young or older, I might be wrong, but I think it's important to have someone to do that part for you. And I was reading something from Elizabeth Shepherd. She did a long post on Facebook as to whether everyone had this burnout from hustling, from going out, getting jobs, finding an agent. And there were a lot of comments of people who are going right through this.
Yep.
Where do you go? Do you do it on your own? Do you get someone to help you? You know,
and there aren't that many good agents. There are people who mean well. There are people who would want to manage you, but they may not have a lot to offer. It still might be good, though, right?
Right.
To have someone in there with you.
I think so, because they have the connections to the agents who book the room. So yes, I worked in Canada, but I also cracked the US market, which was very, very, very hard to do, because you know, you had to do specific things that US artists didn't do, like sing the Maple Leaf Rag, play the Maple Leaf Rag. And then it would, you know, your papers would go somewhere in the desert, and they'd just look at it and go, do we give this Canadian group a chance? But we were so good, and I was really a tough leader. Everything was perfect. Harmony. I had 7 people.
Wow.
So the harmonies had to be right on. The actual flow of the show had to be right on.
When you did the U.S. and when you had a manager and an agent, were you, this was before the 15-year hiatus?
Yes.
Right.
Yes. Oh, yes.
Yeah.
This was starting in 79, going into 79 to 90, no, 79 to 89. I think, yeah.
Do you think that your career, when you think about the stages on the ons and offs, do you have a favorite moment, something that you just go, I am never going to forget this as long as I live?
There have been magic moments, and I would. It's hard because you can be in a huge space like a really like a 3,000 seat theater and be doing a brilliant play. But I think the magic moments come from a combination of the band and the audience and you. So that, and I relish those moments of magic when you're all in sync. So,
Don't you think it's weird when you say that? So many of those moments you're talking about are at one of my salons or the Home Smith Bar or someplace that's pretty small.
Yeah.
So there might be 40 or 50 people that witness that magic, and then tens of thousands who will never be there at that moment.
Yeah. And it's transportative because you will never forget that, and neither will anyone who was in the room. And it's like a state of bliss, mm-hmm. which I try to, and you're always after that state of bliss where everything just works so magically, and I'm so conscious of it. I'm so there to experience that, and every time it comes, it's just magic.
Do you have something you do to prepare before you go on stage? Some people might go to bed early with a bubble bath. Some people just go on business as usual, and getting on stage is one of the many things they have to do in a given day.
Yeah, I do. I have a thing whether I'm doing singing or theater. My moment is when I'm sitting doing my makeup for whatever time I'm on stage. So doing the makeup and a beautiful glass of single malt scotch.
Yes.
And that is my preparation. And I know people, do exercises or yoga mm-hmm. or have a bubble bath. But for me, that's my moment to focus. So, and it's always been, whether I've been in a huge theater or a tiny little dressing room, that's my focusing. And I just let everything go and just concentrate on that.
Well, on that note, let's go have a whiskey and call an end to this. You are wonderful. I love you so much.
You are magic. You are bliss. Right.
Thank you. June Garber, thank you so much for coming by. Next week, my guest is Mendelssohn Joe, going out into the woods. He lives far up north in a shack where he's covered in paint and paintings everywhere. And he's one of my favorites, one of Canada's most eccentric artists. And really, the guy has a heart of gold. He really cares about the world. And he's going to be a fascinating interview. So join me next week for Mendelssohn Joe. And in the meantime, I want to thank my sponsors one more time. BarberFinancial.com. It's a new year. You might as well start thinking about your money, right? So check them out. Paul Barber at barberfinancial.com. Also, Barbarian Steakhouse. I'm a regular there, and I don't even eat meat. So you want to check out Barbarian Steakhouse, 7 Elm Street, right near Dundas and Yonge. And Lula Lounge, lula.ca, thank you for your support. HughesRoomLive.com, thank you for your support. I'll be announcing a concert next week. Going to do something end of February, early March. Just trying to find a date for the next Tiki Collective show over there at Hughes Room. And jazzbistro.ca have come on board as well. So thank you to all the people who sponsor this. If you want to sponsor or help me out in any way, Patreon is where you go. I always say $5 a month, but $50 a month goes even better. Anyway, whatever you can do, I appreciate it. See you next week, next Friday, for Mendelssohn Joe.